right, so this has been an amazing day. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really excited to have Geri all the way from the UK to give our closing keynote. She is really rad. She also is really awesome and knows a lot about accessibility, especially like WCAG 3.0. She did a talk on it. It was very, very interesting. It'll be probably a while before we're all doing 3.0, but can't hurt to get started. As you all know, we've all started design systems, got them started, found tools and stuff, but kind of what happens after that. So we've learned a lot about evolution of, what the future can hold with like AI and structured documentation and all these other tools and stuff, but what happens when design systems mature? So Geri's gonna talk a little bit about that with her experience with the NewsKit design system. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Geri.
Hey everyone, I'm Geri. Thanks for having me all the way over from London and to zeroheight for inviting me. It's a huge privilege to be here. I appreciate I'm the lady who's standing between you and free beer, so I'll hurry it along. So the theme of today is the evolution of design systems. So I'm going to talk about what to do when your design system grows up, moves out, and gets its own apartment. It's the 10th birthday of atomic design, which is something to celebrate. Woo! Design systems are growing up. Now, during the time I've watched design systems grow up, I've watched my children grow up. I was at the last Design Systems London meetup where Henry Daggett presented a chart on the stages of a design system. It's a really great talk. I'd encourage you to check it out. While I was sitting in the audience looking at Henry's chart on his design systems journey, it occurred to me how raising a design system is a lot like raising a child. These are my identical twins. For this talk, I explained to them that I was speaking at a conference about evolution and growing, and I asked if they would recreate this photo for me in one of those Facebook mom before and after shots. If you stick around, I'll show you the result at the end and what the evolution of children looks like. Now, if I could chart the journey I've been on with my children with time along the bottom and enjoyment up the side, it would look a little something like this. Let's have a baby. Seemed like a great idea at the time. Naming is hard. The big day arrives. You've brought a magical new human into the world and share photos of their perfect little toes on social media. Then reality kicks in. What the flip have we done? You realize that sleep is something you used to do. Then the hype wears off and you realize the world has tricked you. Cue the endless mundanity of childcare. From this point, it's all painful drudgery punctuated with microscopic glimmers of hope, like you drink your first hot, uninterrupted coffee. Your kid rides a bike, the closest you'll ever get to being high without actual pharmaceuticals. But these highs are punctuated with some soul-crushing lows. You're doomed to endure an eternity of infernal birthday parties where the gifts are curses made of tears. Then your kid starts school and contracts norovirus for about a year. And everyone literally dies of dysentery. From here, it speeds up into a roller coaster of emotions: joy, heartache, beauty, frustration. It's high school, TikTok, boyfriends, drunken parties, driving lessons, exams and exams and exams and exam results. Now, if I could chart the journey, or circle back round to Henry's graph and chart the journey I've been on with design systems, it does have a curiously similar trajectory to raising a child. Let's start a design system. Seemed like a great idea at the time. Naming is hard. version 1.0 release. You've brought a magical new design system into the world and share photos of its perfect little button component on social media. Then reality kicks in. What the beep have we done? It seems like sleep is something you used to do. Then the hype wears off and you realize version 1.0 is actually a bit shit. Cue the endless mundanity of feedback. From this point, it's all painful drudgery, punctuated with pixelated flickers of hope, like your first live component seen in the wild, your first community contribution, the closest you'll ever get to being design systems high without actual pharmaceuticals. But these highs are punctuated with some vortexes of despair. Like Figma changes the way it handles props, again. Then a new chief design officer starts and the system gets defunded. And everyone metaphorically dies of dysentery. From here it speeds up into a roller coaster of emotions: joy, heartache, beauty, frustration. It's budget wrangling, imposter syndrome, accessibility audits, team restructures, the redesigns of the button component. This might look ridiculous, but these are all things that have happened to me during the last 6 years working in design systems. From your faces, I can see a few of you have lived through a similar design systems evolution to get to this point. I'm around for a beer later. I would love to hear your war stories. Okay, so let's get started. As this talks on the evolution of design systems, I've divided it into 3 sections. First up, a nod to the past, what we've learned, and props to the incredible community of clever and creative folks who have evolved design systems thinking. The present, a bit about where we are now, and I'm centering this around my experiences on NewsKit, the design system that I'm currently working on. Then climb aboard the time machine. Together with the help of my new BFF ChatGPT, we'll have a punt at some future predictions, along with some AI-generated jokes. Just as a caveat, everything I've learned is down to the thinking of much cleverer people on the internet. I'm always keen to give credit, so I've included all sources at the end of these slides, which I'll share with zeroheight. Now, I don't want to dwell on the past too long, but no talk on the evolution of design systems would be complete without a nod to the shoulders of the giants that we stand on today. Earlier, Brad gave a great overview of the technical evolution of systems. And around the mid-noughties, we saw pattern libraries like this start to emerge. This was Yahoo's from 2006. But it was really the technical challenges of large-scale web projects in the 2010s where the whole digital design system thing really kicked off. So it's here our story begins. So put on your overly distressed jeans and your crossbody fanny pack. We're heading back to 2013 with Brad's groundbreaking post on the atomic design model, which needs no introduction. You're all familiar with the atoms, molecules, and organisms that make up our interfaces. Is atomic design dead? Not the last time I looked, Brad. While writing this talk, I kind of fell down a rabbit hole of atomic design variations. There's countless organizations who have taken the model and made it their own. As Brad Frost's inbox has informed us, Brad let us down on the science metaphors. So folks have thoughtfully fixed this by introducing complex organisms, species, and ions. Others have put their own spin on the metaphors, many of them curiously leaning towards food. The system that resonated with me most, though, is this one called cake. It starts with flavors, moves to ingredients, mixes, layers, recipes, and ends in cakes. If I'm honest, for me, any process that ends in cakes is a winner. I'm not meaning to throw shade on any of these. If the collection of parts in your org is Lego or chocolate flavored, any metaphor that helps you to explain something complex is a good thing. I've been designing for the web since the early 2000s, and the simple idea of chunking down interfaces really did revolutionize the way we design and build digital products. Along with Brad's atomic design, there are a host of early innovators and trailblazers in design systems. Nathan Curtis, whose Medium posts have shaped my design systems learning at every stage. Gina Ann, who led the charge on design tokens, runs Clarity Conference and many of the other community initiatives that regularly bring us all together. Dan Maul, whose good humor and wise insights regularly lights up my inbox. And of course, the good work of the Design Tokens community group, who are driving forward a new standard for us. But for me, it's the unsung heroes, the designers and engineers who generously give their time, learning, and incredible insights back to the community, along with organizations like zeroheight, who bring us all together. The open source work and the open ethos of the systems community makes this a delightful space to work in, and I feel like we're all really lucky to have found a niche in this small part of the internet. Take a moment to give the person next to you a design systems hug, or if you're British, you could make eye contact awkwardly. So, back to the present. We've had some incredible stuff happening in the system space today. Listening to all our speakers sort of reassures me that, we're all fighting the same battles. So I'm going to use this section to share some of the work my team have been doing on NewsKit. If you're not familiar with NewsKit, it's a design system that feeds media and broadcast brands across News Corp. In the UK, that's brands like The Times, The Sun, and The Sunday Times, and here in the US, we provide foundations for Dow Jones on sites like the Wall Street Journal. If you want to dig into anything I'm talking about today, there are links from our website, newskit.co.uk. Our code is open source, and our Figma component library and theme is available on the Figma community. Now, I can't take any credit for NewsKit's early success. I joined just over a year ago, so the foundations are down to the incredible work of our design and engineering team. Like most established design systems, it's been through a lot of change and iteration, and I'm going to talk about NewsKit's evolution today through an atomic design lens. Like many systems, NewsKit starts with foundational tokens for theming. One of the most powerful features of NewsKit is its theming system. It makes the system flexible between brands and provides a really robust foundation. And recently, our clever engineers have built a tokens pipeline to support theming that looks a bit like this. We design in Figma, and we use Token Studio plugin to create themes. Token Studio allows us to pull and push tokens to and from GitHub. When you update in GitHub, it runs the pipeline in Circle CI, which checks and lints the code, then runs Style Dictionary, which does all the transformations and resolves the presets. It then publishes to package managers like NPM, which allows our consumers to pull into their own applications. Our system components then consume the tokens, which of course theme our atoms, molecules, and organisms. At the other end of the atomic model, NewsKit has gone a step further and introduced a stage beyond pages and templates that we call solutions. Solutions are products which are designed and built with NewsKit design system components ready for teams to use. They're more than templates or pages because they're already configured to talk to our content platform's back end. We currently have two solutions available for teams to consume, NewsKit Account and NewsKit Help Hub. Account is a full-service account module that allows customers to manage their personal details, subscription, billing, and preferences. Teams can configure Account to provide the different feature combinations that their customers need and theme it to their brand. We also have a Help Hub solution built from NewsKit components. It's an FAQs module that lets you create a product help desk. And again, this is integrated and ready to use on your site. Now, it's quite unusual for a design systems team to build complete products. And it's hard to know where these solutions sit. The dotted line in an atomic model is typically where the design system ends and product starts. But in NewsKit, the design system owns these solutions and the templates and the pages they're built from. I feel kind of conflicted over where these solutions sit. The fact that few other design systems seem to be doing this makes me question if they have a place in a design system. I'd be interested to hear what people think.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Was that you, Brad Frost? Oh, there we go, job done. Yeah, I'll get my coat. Our design system has been restructured since these solutions were built. Some of the engineers that built these modules have moved into the title teams to support their continued development, which maybe gives me my answer. Perhaps as a systems team, we were just being too prescriptive in the way components should be used. By offering anything larger than molecules, are we making the system too opinionated? This is a lesson NewsKit has learned the hard way designing and building an audio player component. In 2020, the Times and the Sunday Times, two big newspaper brands in the UK, launched a radio station, Times Radio. The NewsKit team was asked to deliver an audio player which would be used on the new Times Radio site, but could also potentially be used by the other broadcast brands that NewsKit supports. An audio player is complex. For a radio station, it needs to support live radio, but also play catch-up pre-recorded shows, and these both require different functionality. There's also logic to be considered, like how to handle poor internet connections. Version 1 of the audio player took the design systems team 3 months to build, which delayed the Times Radio team. Then once the engineers tried to integrate the component, it was clear it didn't provide enough flexibility, and they ended up abandoning the radio player. Fast forward a bit, NewsKit regrouped and decided to take a different approach to give more flexibility. This kicked off a total refactor of the whole system to integrate a much more flexible and robust theming system. They rebuilt the audio player component, and this version 2 of the component was more successful and adopted across multiple brands. The team received feedback, fixed a few bugs, and improved the component's accessibility. But there were still layout and spacing problems, and more niche requests started popping up. Teams wanted an inline audio player, a text-to-speech player, a persistent player to sit on top of content. The audio player was still too opinionated. It was never going to serve the needs of all our consumers, and this was a harsh realization after the team had put in so much time and effort to get to this point. We realized the only way this component would fulfill all needs was to make it more flexible, so we started again and broke the component into smaller subcomponents with their own props. Instead of giving consumers complete prescriptive organisms, taking it back to molecule level and giving them much simpler pieces to assemble how they want has proved more effective. Nathan Curtis has an excellent Medium piece on subcomponents. He also did a brilliant talk at Web Expo on them last month, so if you're interested in a deep dive expert opinion, I'd recommend watching it back. In his Medium post, Nathan defines a subcomponent as an independently composable UI component with a well-defined API intended for use only within a specific parent component. To give this some practical context, instead of just an audio player to configure, consumers have access to individual subcomponents like audio player play pause button, audio player seek bar, and audio player volume control. Audio player acts as the wrapper. We've since gone on to rebuild our card component to be composable. Consumers can slot in the elements they require, like media, text, and actions, and decide on the orientation and placement, rather than us deciding how the elements of a card should appear and behave. We support these composable components with documentation and storybook scenarios like these showing common use cases, best practice, and accessibility guidelines. Now, much like parenting, as a systems team, it can be hard to let your baby out into the world without the guardrails. Perhaps we need to be more zen like Master Oogway here and let go of the illusion of control. I think the problem is design systems teams tend to attract designers and engineers who have great attention to detail and high coding and accessibility standards. Zeroheight's How We Document report here from 2023 showed 54% of respondents who work in design systems are 35 years and over. From that, we can perhaps infer that design systems are typically more complex, so require more seasoned nerds. And as a design systems team, we pride ourselves at being experts in UX and component best practice. But systems teams, at least in the UK, are generally not all that representative of a wide and diverse range of users. Design system teams I've worked on, worked inside and alongside, have been almost entirely white, cis men who are non-disabled. Rather timely, on the flight over, I listened to Amy Hupe's new podcast called Systems of Harm. It's worth checking out. The first episode is about cognitive bias and how design systems teams making opinionated decisions on systems components can perpetuate systemic bias. The example Amy uses is something as simple as title fields and forms like Mr. and Mrs., and the assumptions these make around gender identity. Now, as a largely homogenized systems team, it makes me question if we're the right people to be making prescriptive rules on component use and assumptions about end users. As systems grow and evolve, I think we have to stop being so opinionated. A design system like ours is consumed by different brands with wildly different users, and their product teams know their consumers better than we do. In my experience, if you're too prescriptive, teams will just build the things they want from scratch. Then you lose control over coding standards, accessibility, and all the core stuff that the systems team is good at and can plug in from the start. It's all about finding the right balance of flex for your organization and empowering teams to make sensible, balanced decisions. Of course, there's always going to be instances where using a component in a certain way or adding in different features is just not accessible or appropriate. Use tools like Storybook, your doc site, or your design libraries to show best practice examples, call out the accessibility considerations and the semantics. For me, the important bit is consumers are using the core atoms fed by tokens. In NewsKit, our opinionated molecules and organisms, we're slowly learning to chill out a bit over. The final point in my section on the present is around changes to team structure that we've recently made in NewsKit. Now, I appreciate this is specific to changes in our organization, but we've been running an interesting experiment that I thought might be worth sharing. For the first few years, the main requirement of the team was researching and building new components. We had product people who were our links into titles, and we'd prioritize the components that the consuming teams needed and build them to suit their requirements. A few years in, our system has all the core components. It's well documented, we work in the open using GitHub issues, we have Figma libraries, a tokens pipeline, and a solid support network across different channels. What's next? As of March this year, we reduced our core systems team down by a third. We loaned the rest of our highly skilled designers and engineers to title teams. Their aim is to observe how teams are using the design system and to try to instill some of the best practice and scalable ways of working that the systems team is good at. It's too early to say whether this experiment is a success, but it's already produced some interesting results. It's hugely beneficial to be forced to consume from the system. You quickly see where the frustrations lie. Our NewsKitters have uncovered inefficiencies and ways workflows can be streamlined. I kind of feel like as a systems function, we've instinctively gone through this design thinking double diamond. We were all designers and engineers in product teams. We went wide and did a load of discovery and defined best practice in a design system, learned how to think in systems, collaborate and build to scale, and now we're converging again to rejoin product teams. It's kind of like the whole process has just come full circle and we're kind of back to where we started. So, welcome to the future. Back to where we started. A teensy bit battle-scarred, but a hell of a lot wiser. As we're heading to the future, I asked DALL-E, the AI engine that can create images from a description, to set the scene for us. My question was, what will a design systems team look like in the future? Are you ready? You'll be reassured to see it's the same group of white guys, all wearing the same black, ironic typographic t-shirts, poised to mansplain CSS variables to you. Sadly, I've left my crystal ball back in London, so rather than make future predictions, I'm going to cover my top 5 highly opinionated opinions on the future of design systems. The things I'm going to cover here are, number 1, accessibility is non-negotiable. Number 2, set the rules but not the output. Number 3, controversial one, make the system mandatory. Number 4, keep the conversation going. And finally, automate the boring stuff. First up, accessibility is non-negotiable. I was going to ask you to put your hand up if accessibility is part of your role, but I can't see anyone. So I'll just imagine that's everyone. As Michelle mentioned, today is Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is an occasion to get everyone talking, thinking, and learning about digital access and inclusion. One of the best things that design systems has brought to the table is the importance of accessibility, meeting WCAG standards, testing with users with disabilities, and considering users of assistive technology. We've still got a mountain to climb, but the tireless work of accessibility advocates in design systems teams is slowly bringing product teams to account. Keep fighting the good fight, people. I feel like at least in systems, we've reached a point where accessibility is non-negotiable. Next up, set the rules, not the output. I've already spoken about the benefits we've seen from using composable components in NewsKit, but I'm talking about adopting a different mindset. Starting with a big confession, UI designers like me broke the internet. Designers like me have schooled junior designers in these pixel-perfect mock-ups, which are just fantasy images of what UI should look like. Designers create components at fixed resolutions with beautifully curated copy, often with no thought to how they behave between breakpoints, how behaviors or states work, or what happens if the user zooms or increases type size. I love this approach that's emerging on being less prescriptive and more declarative. My thinking on this started after a chat with the legendary Jeremy Keith from Clearleft, who had just written an interesting piece which sparked a talk on declarative design systems. Jeremy uses the imperative-declarative paradigm that comes from software development. Imperative programming describes code in a step-by-step process, giving explicit instructions. Declarative programming describes what you want the program to achieve rather than how it should run. To circle back round to the conference's design systems cake metaphor, imperative is asking your friend to bake you a cake by following a recipe step by step, measuring the ingredients and cooking the cake for the exact time. Declarative is asking your friend to bake you a cake. You don't care how he bakes it, that's up to him, as long as there's cake. Design systems tend to be imperative. Here are a set of pre-made components. The design systems team has made all the decisions for you, rather than a true design system for generating components. A systemic approach sets the rules but not the output. Jeremy Keith gives some examples in his blog, like say, instead of specifying a hex value for a button hover state, you specify on hover reduce lightness by 5%. Rather than designing to fixed breakpoints, you spec out the minimum and maximum layout and let the browser make the decisions on what happens in between. Jeremy's post says declarative design systems are about setting boundaries and then ceding control to the individual elements, setting up the rules and ratios in advance, but leaving the detail of the final implementation to the browser at runtime. This sentiment is echoed in talks by Andy Bell, Jen Simmons, and many other clever folks who are advocating for this common sense approach. I kind of feel like this applies equally to parenting. You set the rules in advance, but you leave the detail of the final shit show to your child at runtime. Though if your kid's at a birthday party jacked up on Reese's peanut butter cups and Coke, the outcome is typically less predictable. I guess this is my way of saying, I'm sorry we designers broke everything. Ooh, but could you tighten up the kerning on the R? Or increase the line spacing by 0.25 rem? And decrease the size of the emoji by 4 pixels. Designers, eh? My third shout for the future is generally a very unpopular one: make the design system mandatory. At school in the UK, we wear a uniform. Now, I know some of my American friends laugh at English school uniforms because some of them look like you're about to perform a magic show at wizard school. That's just posh kids. But mandatory uniforms create a sense of unity amongst students. My own kids thought they were a good thing because everyone fits in. Like a design system, they create a shared foundation. I firmly believe unless you make a design system mandatory, you will never get total engagement and contribution. There is always going to be a team or an external agency who doesn't like the current tech stack and rebuilds the existing component library from scratch in Material UI or whatever this week's new hotness is. When I worked on the design system at Lloyd's Banking Group, 3 external teams did a complete rebuild of our component and design libraries because of politics and opinions. And much like children, a lot of the problems with a design system starts when you give it a name. You know, once there's a name, there's something to blame. The design system components don't fit with our brand. The design system components are limiting my creativity. I think the point we're missing is the mandatory bit isn't how the components look, which is what folks get hung up about. The value in the system isn't in the artifacts, it's in the system's thinking and the scalable ways of working, and that's what should be mandatory. The design system provides a set of flexible base components which have been accessibility tested, have considered ARIA tags, and work for users of assistive tech. Take these foundations and build on them. As a super simplified diagram of how NewsKit works, we have the core NewsKit design system with its base components. Components are themed and consumed into products. Title teams can also create their own local design systems. If they want to build complex components atomically, they have all the base atoms and utilities from the core. If the core design system is mandatory, it doesn't limit what teams can build with it or impact how the product looks. It just ensures a solid foundation. Looking at this diagram, the core doesn't have to be NewsKit code. It could be Brad's idea of one global design system to rule them all. We could all pull from one core, apply our theme, build the stuff we want from one shared foundation. The joy of never having to build and document another date picker. Brad, I'm totally up for making this happen, and inviting the community to pitch in and contribute. Perhaps big corporates could pay to use it, which could fund it for everyone else. It's the foundation, which is the bit that I think should be mandatory. Now, I appreciate making a design system mandatory is incredibly hard with all the politics and opinions in a big organization. To date, I have not been able to achieve this, which is why it's on my rant list of future aspirations. Okay, I'll take my police hat off now. Number 4 on my list is keep the conversation going. It's hard to keep teams engaged with the design system, especially if you've been down a rocky path or, in some cases, even a messy divorce. It's a cliche, but design systems are all about people. Look after your consumers, listen to them, 100% own your failings and mistakes, and find ways forward together. Last on my list is get emerging technologies to do the boring jobs for you, to automate the checkbox stuff. For me, any repetitive task should be automated to free us up to do the fun stuff. At NewsKit Design, we're using plugins to automate process. Earlier, I shared our tokens pipeline, which alleviates a lot of manual cut and paste. AI integration is stealthily creeping into our tools like code editors and content management systems. Everyone on Twitter seems obsessed with ChatGPT, and I, for one, welcome our robot overlords if it makes my day-to-day life easier. If you look at the little zeroheight zine that came with your conference swag, I've shared the ways ChatGPT is helping our designers and engineers on NewsKit. I thought my piece was pretty innovative until I saw Brad's, which depicts the future of design systems as a face labeled GPT-4 vomiting out components. Anyway, I'm no expert in AI, so I asked ChatGPT to predict how emerging technologies will affect the future of design systems. As well as automating tasks, it suggested it could make data-driven design decisions, improve and personalize the user experience, and improve design code and quality. Yeah. No matter what sort of prompt I gave it, the answers it spat out were kind of generic and boring. They lacked any of the originality and the quirky human ideas that come out when my team get together for a brainstorm. But perhaps that's the whole point. AI is here to do the grunt work for us. ChatGPT can fix code, suggest hex values for an accessible color ramp, generate a token structure, find icon sets that contain the icons you need, and it writes pretty decent documentation. Let's make a pact to only give AI the boring job so we can focus on the fun human stuff. While AI can't replace the creativity and problem-solving skills in my team, it does write cracking design system jokes. Why did the design system go on a diet? Because it had too many components. Why did the designer break up with the design system? Because it was too controlling and wouldn't let them be creative. That one feels a little Freudian. So, thanks for sticking with me through this somewhat, at times, chaotic talk on the evolution of design systems. I said at the beginning, I asked my teenagers to recreate this photo for me to chart the evolution of children. I even looked into ordering them t-shirts and found the location with the perfect lighting. Do you want to see what happened when I asked? As you can see, life moves on. I can no longer expect to dress them in a novelty t-shirt and get them to pose. They're young adults finding their own way in the world and soon to be leaving home and going to college. They're growing up, moving out, and getting their own apartment, albeit one I'm paying for. The same goes with design systems. The evolution of design systems has showed us you can code the shiniest, most accessible system, but business priorities and brand decisions will never allow for perfect cycles of iteration, adoption, and growth. Product teams have their own roadmap, their unique user needs, and will always want to do their own thing, and we have to learn to flex, to trust our consumers, and stop being so prescriptive. What the last few years have taught me is to learn to roll with the punches, constantly reinvent yourself and adapt. Thankfully though, kids and design systems aside, back home in London, there is one family member I can rely on to never let me down. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geri. I love how animal friendly everyone is. I really want a dog. But yes, thank you so much. That was a great talk. And that is wrapping up the conference. I have a couple little tidying up things to go over. So now I'm the one that stands between you and the beer or carbonated beverage or wine of your choice. So yes, first off, I'd like to thank all the speakers for their talks today. So Brad, Val, Adekunle, Sarah, Luke, Geri, thank you so much. And thank you to you all for coming out and making our first Converge in the US a huge success. It's been really fun. And really great to see everyone engage in person. We hope that you all stay in touch. If you try anything you learned today or were inspired by today, please let us know as well as the speakers. We love nerding out about this stuff. So you definitely won't bother us. And so a couple other things. If you go to zeroheight.com, we just redesigned our website. It's got a lot of cool, awesome illustrations done by our comms designer, Nicole, and it's really fun. So definitely check that out. And then if you like this conference and wanted more, we have a special announcement. We are doing Converge in the UK again. This time it will be in Manchester in September. So you are welcome to come across the pond with me. I'll be there. So maybe we can go to Man U game or something. But yes, consider going. If you have teams and friends in the UK, let them know. And I guess like and subscribe or something. I don't know. I don't know what other things. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else. Am I forgetting anything, Luke? Luke's my boss. Your presentation was great.
I just want to say, so Michelle here not only has been our erstwhile MC for the entire day, so first off, give a massive round of applause for Michelle for hosting the day, but also as our only team member of the advocacy team in the US, has basically single-handedly done this conference. So had a little bit of support from us over in the UK, but this was all Michelle's doing. So everybody give it up for Michelle. And buy her a beer. Buy her a beer, but on zeroheight's credit card. Yeah, that sounds good. Cool.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks all. Thank you so much. And if you like this, we have Hella Design Systems. This is my meetup. We meet in the Bay Area occasionally. I do this thing called Pints and Patterns, where we have maybe pints of ice cream, and then talk about patterns. So okay. So that's all for me. Thank you so much. There's also a big group of zeroheight people that are going to walk over to the Salesforce Park Beer Garden, and you are welcome to follow them. We'll be there from 4:30 until I guess the tab runs out. Maybe I don't know. So look forward to catching up with you there. A lot of the speakers will be there, ready to engage and talk about creating this one global design system. So we'll see you there. Thank you so much, everyone.